Welcome to freedomlovin.com, where we focus on building freedom in an unfree world. Through personal development, location independence, and passive income strategies. Now here's your host, Kevin Koskela.
Welcome to Freedom Lovin'. This is Kevin, and this is episode number 80. And in just a minute, I have an interview with an on-the-spot live interview with my friend Josh Fechter, who is also a professional digital marketing expert. So there's a whole lot to be learned in this interview on digital marketing, and also we get into Liberty and how he got his unconventional start in this world. So stay tuned for that. Just a couple things before we get started. Are you a busy entrepreneur that wants to read a lot of books but has no time? Today's guest on the show actually read 120 books in 1 year. It's pretty hard to do that, but with 100mustreads.com, you can listen to entire book summaries in less than 1 hour per day. So just head over to 100mustreads, 100mustreads.com to get access to over 130 business book summaries today. So just a couple things that I've noticed over the last week, or that I've kind of learned over the last week. So one of them is starting conversations with people can really pay off. So I used to be really shy and I didn't really want to talk to anyone, and I still have some degree of that. Like, I'm an introvert, and I do get more of my energy by kind of recharging and being alone and reading and kind of hanging out by myself. But I do think that what I've learned over the years is that starting conversations with random people is really a good thing. There's one thing that my friend Steve Michaels has said, who was on the show a couple times, is you can never have too many friends. And I agree with that for the most part. I mean, I think you can have too many Facebook friends because you kind of lose track of everybody. But his point is that you never know how important someone might be to you in your life for any reason. It could be anything from a business connection to a friend, to, someone that you hang out with, to someone that you might want to date, to someone that maybe has a lead on something for you. So anyway, last weekend I was at a festival and was standing in line and wasn't really doing anything, and I just turned around behind me and started talking to the girl behind me and asked her about the show or something that we were waiting for. And then we got talking, where do you live, blah, blah, blah. And it turns out, and I'm looking for a place to live right now, and I mentioned that. And she's like, oh yeah, my dad's got a place that he rents out for super cheap, and it's really nice, and it has a view of the bay. And I'm like, okay, that sounds pretty awesome. And the location is pretty good. So I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to get this place, because I ended up becoming Facebook friends with her, and I finally heard back from her just today, and I'm not sure if the place is available still or not, but $600 a month to live in San Diego, like a couple miles, I think, from the beach is really pretty amazing. So I'm hoping that it'll pan out, but you never know. But if I didn't do that, if I didn't turn around and talk to her, I never would have heard about this incredible deal. So I really like that kind of thinking, when you're out and about, just think about starting conversations. It doesn't have to be anything major, just like, how's your day going? And some people will not respond at all, and so others will tell you all about their day and want to get to know you. So I really like, this kind of casual approach to starting conversations, and I think it can benefit anyone that does that. So, and especially if you're an introvert, so you maybe just take it easy. Don't start like 10 conversations in a day. Maybe just do one, and maybe make it a goal to start one every day or something like that. So, and the other thing was, I was listening to and reading my friend Niall's blog, Niall Doherty, who was on the show also back like 2 years ago, I think. But anyway, he was talking about this idea of staying in one place and getting things done versus traveling and like bouncing around and not being able to get as much done. And he talked about the Guns, Germs, and Steel. I think it was a book and a movie, and I watched the movie a long time ago, but it was kind of about this idea that there's these people that, when humans originated, they were just constantly on the move, and they weren't really progressing at a quick rate until they were able to kind of settle down and do like agriculture and stuff like that. So I got thinking about this idea. Like his point was that he doesn't want to travel right now because he's really getting a lot done by not traveling. And I can totally see that because he was traveling around the world for 4 years, without flying. So that can really take a lot of time because every time you go to a new place, you're spending a lot of your time looking for a place to live. And even now I'm spending some time looking for a place to live. So it's kind of time away from productivity. So I totally get that. And I agree for the most part that settling down somewhere, you do get a lot more done. But I'm also listening to the latest Richard Branson audiobook on Audible, and he's talking about how much he travels. And he said that last year he traveled like every month on average about 17 days out of every month. So he was hardly ever in his actual office. And so I'm just kind of comparing the two things. So I think possibly that's because he's established, like he's not starting a new business, although he does seem to start things regularly. So I don't know. I think there are ways to do both things. I think right now, for me, it is better to kind of be settled in, but I am definitely going to be itching to travel. I know I'm not going to be just in one place forever and ever. So we'll see what comes next. I have no plans, but I think that there's a way to build things when you're kind of settled in and then travel and still keep up on those things, but not expect that you're going to build anything while you're bouncing around. So anyway, that's a couple things to think about for today. And one more thing. I did start a group, a freedom loving group on Facebook, and it's been really fun. Just a few days ago, I just started it. I think maybe just 2 days ago. So, and we've got some really cool people in there. And my guest today is in the group, and it's cool. We're just talking about all kinds of things freedom related. So I'd love to have you join. If you're listening to this show, you are a candidate to join. And all you have to do is either go to the group on Facebook, which is facebook.com/groups/freedomlovin' with no G at the end. And you'll see us there. And then you just request to be added, and I will add you if you don't look too scary. Or you just can search for me on Facebook and add me as a friend, and then send me a quick message just saying, hey, I heard your podcast and I want to join a group. And I will add you that way as well. And it would be super cool to see your face in there in the Freedom Lovin' group. I think that's about it. And I'm going to post a couple of videos coming up. As this podcast today, the interview part of it is we actually did a video. So I will have the video up in the group as well as the podcast, the audio podcast itself too. So stay tuned for that. Just check us out on Facebook. And also, please give us a rating and review when you get the chance on iTunes. It'd be much appreciated. And I'll go ahead and read that on the next show. So anyway, have a great week. Enjoy the interview, go out there and build some freedom, and we'll talk to you soon. So I'm super excited to be here at the headquarters of 22 Social. And today I have as a guest on Freedom Lovin' my friend and professional digital marketer, Josh Fechter. Josh, welcome to Freedom Lovin'.
Thank you for inviting me. It's always a great pleasure to hang out with you just as friends, and finally on your podcast. This is exciting. We can talk to each other and spread some good messages out to people about digital marketing and living free. I think that's, really important.
That's what it's all about. We're here in San Diego. This is downtown, and just behind us is Petco Park, or just in front of us where the Padres play. And they're actually having a game in an hour, which got me stuck in some weird traffic and streets being closed off. But that's all right. Baseball season's winding down because it's October, I'm hoping. So it'll be nice and free here with less traffic and no parking hassles anymore. Anyway, so wanted to start with just kind of your background. Like, where are you from? How did you get your start in life? And then we'll talk about your college experience after that.
Okay, yeah, definitely. I have, I would say, a very unique background. And what a lot of people don't know about me is when I was younger, I was actually part of a very religious family, and they were Jewish. So I had as they say in Judaism, payas, and it's really when your hair grows out on the sides of your head. And I had the yarmulke, and I actually had my bar mitzvah in Israel. And went through the whole schooling where girls and boys are separated. Mm-hmm. So it's very strict, and you're praying 3 times a day. And then I landed in high school, and everything seemed to change really quickly because the high school that I went to wasn't religious. So it's really just hitting your head against the wall saying, oh my gosh, there's people out here and they're talking to girls, what is going on? A totally different culture. And it was one of those things that really gave me a lot of insight into how religious organizations work and how, non-religious organizations work, because some people never get to experience both of them. They get stuck in, let's say, like whether it's being extremely Catholic or extremely Jewish, being on the very orthodox end of it. And it requires an everyday observance. So that's why people are really, stuck in that mindset. And it's not anything negative. People choose their different ways of life. However, there is a lot out there to explore, and I'm glad that my parents actually let me explore and didn't send me to an all-boys Jewish private school. That would have been the end of me. I don't know where I would be right now. That would be pretty rough.
Yeah. So then you moved to San Diego after Israel, or?
Oh, no. So I was living in San Diego at the time, and there's a number of religious schools here in San Diego. And a lot of people don't know that it's actually another hub for, I would say, a Jewish community. New York is definitely a big one, as many people know. And then you have LA and San Francisco, and those are the other big three.
So we have the best weather in the world. We're the capital of craft beer. And now we're also a big hub for the Jewish community.
Very true.
All right.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and you would never guess that, San Diego would be a hub for the Jewish community, and it's spread out like all throughout here, and it's really remarkable. Like one of the things that it's actually really given me is connections, and that I think is really important because people are able to bond with me, not just on a level where we're both interested in the same hobbies, but that we come from similar backgrounds. And whether that has gotten me further in business or just in meeting new people that have really expanded my opportunities, whether it includes travel or just getting positions at companies, it makes a huge difference.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you were growing up, were you like a straight A student? Were you really into school and just charging it like you are now? Or?
What's interesting is when I went to school, my high school was extremely strict. It was a private school, and if you weren't taking 7 APs, you were considered below average. And I'm not even joking, 7 AP classes, which is insane. And I was taking 3 AP classes, and they considered me below average. And at the time, I was just really maintaining a C because I didn't see a lot of reason to put work into getting straight A's. I just didn't see the result from it. Like, what am I getting from this? Go to a good college, but what do you get from a good college? They tell you get a good job. But it's really hard to understand that notion when you don't even know what job you want.
Yeah.
So you have some people who are in high school that they know the exact road they're going to take because their parents were doctors, and they're like, okay, well, I want my son to be a doctor. And in his mind, he's saying, okay, I'm going to go get straight A's, then go to the best school for doctors. And, whatever that profession may be. However, if you're really open-minded and you're looking for a number of opportunities and you don't really know what you want, it's really hard to focus on getting good grades. And you're more in the position of just taking risks and finding out what works for you.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, that makes total sense. So now then you went to college. Mm-hmm. So can you talk about, you have a pretty interesting college experience. So I definitely want to get into that. So what happened? You went to, was it STSU?
Yes, I went to San Diego State University, and it was a very interesting experience, like Kevin is saying. And one of the things that made it really interesting is that I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. And at the same time, I was extremely ambitious. So I saw the very ambitious people taking on 2 majors, and I always sort of want to one-up everybody. So I decided to, why not chase 3 degrees? And it was political science, economics, and finance. And I was taking 5 classes every summer break, so I never even really had a break. Mm-hmm. And I was about to graduate with 3 degrees in 5 years. And when I was going out to my 4th year, one of the things that really hit me was this idea of freedom. And I'd been reading a lot at the time, and I'd been following Ron Paul, who was a big inspiration of mine at the time. And looking into like Rand Paul, and I was like, wow, these ideas are really great. What can I do with this? How can I get other people to understand this concept of freedom? And I was like, oh, I can start an organization. And it sounded easy just saying that, oh, start an organization, recruit some people. But as anybody knows, it's, especially in the freedom world, it's hard to find other people who are like-minded to you. There's not a lot of people who have a freedom mindset and who are really entrepreneurs. And I think those go absolutely in parallel. Now, what I did is, because I was involved a little bit in digital marketing at the time, is there's a little tool called Facebook Graph, and you can find the interests of people on Facebook and what they like. Mm-hmm. And I was the first person to use Facebook Graph to start recruiting for organizations. And just about, I think it was 3 months, I had my Young Americans for Liberty organization all set up, and I had members, and it was one of the fastest, I would say, growing chapters in just that short period of time. And then I actually it was our chapter advisor know the strategy I was using to recruit people. And then a month later, I see an email that was sent out to all the chapters in the United States saying, this is how you use Facebook Graph to recruit people for your organization. And I was like, wow, like, this small little digital marketing tactic really made a big difference in the Liberty movement just by, sharing it with the chapter advisor. And then he told his higher ups. And before you know it, we have one of the best recruiting methods, all the organizations, college organizations in the United States. And it was just a simple little thing of plug in a search right into Facebook saying, who are my friends that are interested in Rand Paul? Or who are my friends that are interested in Ron Paul? And they just pop up. And what's cool is not just your friends, but you'll also have people who you share one connection with, and they'll pop up in Facebook Graph too. And you can send them a message and it goes right to their primary inbox.
Yeah.
So we must have messaged maybe close to 500 people knowing that they're interested in Liberty. And it would be so hard to get in touch with these people if we were just tabling on campus, almost impossible, especially because there's definitely a social fear of going out and talking to the people who are selling Liberty. Even though they're interested in Liberty, they don't want to be known as part of that crowd. They rather just go straight to the meeting. They don't want to see their friends, break away from their friends and be like, oh, hey, like, I got to stop at this table where they're talking about Ron Paul. They don't want to do that. That's the last thing they want to do. Yeah. So this made a huge difference.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think I had heard about that. When I was in school, I don't think that I knew what libertarianism was. I definitely wasn't a libertarian. And I don't think there was any sort of organization on my campus like that got people together like that. So it's really cool. And I remember hearing about how fast the Young Americans for Liberty was growing. And I'm like, how did they do that? Like, that seems so hard to do, because I founded the meetup for Ron Paul in 2008 here in San Diego. And that was kind of similar to, Meetup was brand new at that time. Well, it was pretty new at that time. And so I just put a meetup group up, and I'm like, anyone interested in Ron Paul for president? And I got a ton of people interested, and they were coming to the meetings.
Oh, wow.
And the first couple of meetings were really cool because there was people from all ends of the spectrum. It wasn't just like libertarians or Republicans or Democrats. It was like everyone, tons of people were out, because it was like, this is the guy that was saying something different. And I think that's what kind of united a lot of people for Liberty, is like, this is really different than what anyone's talking about. And so how did the Young Americans for Liberty, so what happened after that? Did it grow from there? Did you see any kind of tangible results, like in terms of you making more connections, or I don't know, feeling like you're kind of making a change?
Yeah, I think it was huge. I definitely met a lot of people through Young Americans for Liberty. Some of my closest friends I've met through the organization, and they're doing wonderful things with their lives. They're all entrepreneurs, and some of them actually, podcasts that you recently held, Derek Magel, who's part of that company Praxis, which TK Coleman, you're interviewing him. I met him through Young Americans for Liberty.
Okay.
And that was really big for me. And a number of other people have really changed my life. And one of the big things that I came across was finding people that were motivated to actually change something in the world, that weren't just sitting in their classroom every day and just getting lectures thrown at them and PowerPoints thrown at them, and then they go home and maybe they go to some frat parties. These were people that want to change the world in some way, and they didn't really know how, and they needed leadership. And when I left, I was actually really happy to be able to pass down like my leadership as being president to someone that was very actively involved and has become much more involved since I've left, and he's helped grow the organization, which has been absolutely wonderful.
Oh, that's awesome. So how did you transition then from like kind of promoting Liberty on a college campus to getting really heavily involved in digital marketing and going, okay, now it's time to do something that you're basically choosing yourself, or you're doing something that's more entrepreneurial? Like, how was that transition? Because I know a lot of libertarians, some of them are entrepreneurial, some of them kind of get stuck in let's just talk about it. I don't remember, there's a name I think they have, like talkitarian or something like that, where you just want to talk about all the philosophy forever and then nothing ever gets done. But you actually went to the next step and you're like, okay, I'm going to do something now that is going to change things and for the better.
So I was actually a talkitarian for a while, didn't make the media jump. I would say it started happening when I wanted to spread the message of Liberty, and this was definitely my first digital marketing move where I tried to really reach out to people, and it didn't have to do with recruiting. And what it was is we made videos around spreading the message of Liberty, and we tried to market them on Facebook and drop them into Facebook groups, but it ended up being very spammy. And we didn't know much about digital marketing at the time, and we didn't know that people, when it clicked through to the videos, we thought it was going to be huge. We're like, oh, we're posting in a group that seems to be relevant. They should all love the video. It did not go that way at all. And then soon after, I was chasing my third degree at this time. And what I realized is that I had come to school to learn applicable things I can do with my life and some stuff that can really help me in the workforce. And I wasn't learning that. And I had actually been going through school, like just waiting for that opportunity. And it's one of the reasons I was taking on so many majors. I was like, okay, I didn't really learn anything applicable in political science. What about economics? That seems more applicable. Then I went through economics, and then I was like, okay, well, I'm not going to be guaranteed a job because the people that graduate college, they don't hire econ majors, they don't hire poli-sci majors, they hire finance majors. So I was like, okay, I'll major in finance. And then a little bit more than halfway through finance, I realized, this trap that I'd put myself in, and it seemed like, if I'm going down this road, I'm going to be in college forever. And what I did is I decided to drop out the first day of a new semester, which is not always the best idea. There's a lot of ramifications, and the teachers really looked at me with a lot of surprise. And the day that I dropped out, I decided to start a publication with some of my friends. And it was an online publication, and we were posting a lot of content that's similar to Elite Daily. So if you've ever been on Elite Daily, I would say the content is very low end. And at the time, we didn't know what great content was. We were brand new to digital marketing, again, hitting our head against the wall, just trying to figure out how to make money, how to provide value to people in a way that they can consume, and then we can eventually sell them on something. And after a year of going through that process, it didn't work out. But the beautiful part about it is that it gave my resume a huge boost, and I would have been working on my degree in finance. But instead, I started a publication. I'd recruited close to 150 writers, which is incredible. And one of the tactics that I used, which was Facebook Graph, I also used that for recruiting writers. And to get 150 writers, I think it was about 3 months. Just absolutely incredible. And so we had all this content that we were pushing out, but the one thing we didn't know was how to monetize. So we're throwing ads on our site, we're putting banner ads, and we don't understand why people aren't clicking through and why we're not getting as much money as we want. And we're like, we don't have as much time in the world as we want to. We don't have like another year to keep working on this project. People have things that they're doing. Some of the people that I was working with were still in school. And what ends up happening is that it basically failed. And then a week later, what I did is I started applying to jobs up in Silicon Valley. And within about 2 weeks, I got accepted for a job to go work at a company to market mobile apps. So that was a big jump, going from dropping out of college, starting a publication, and writing that as far as I could, and all of a sudden I'm up in Silicon Valley. And
That's pretty awesome. I mean, it seemed like even though the first thing didn't really work out, it's like you probably learned so much more doing that business than you would have just sitting in boring finance classes. And I think there's a lot to be learned from that experience for a lot of people. Now, we're obviously at 22 Social, so I want to talk about that. What then led you to 22 Social? And then let's talk about like what you guys do here.
Yeah, definitely. I've always had, I would say, a passion to be the best at what I do. And I'm very, very competitive, and people that know me would say that I'm very A-type. And I don't disagree with them because it is true. And when I was working up in Silicon Valley, I had been working on really trying to understand digital marketing and how to market mobile apps. And I wasn't really falling in love with that market because I thought it was overinflated, that people were able to pitch investors based on credibility. Well, I like to call it perceived credibility. So it says, I worked at Google, I worked at Facebook, and I worked at Yahoo or Amazon. And just because they're able to say this, they're able to get funding for their company. And they have no path to monetization whatsoever, but they have a pretty app. And there's a lot of investors out there that know nothing about mobile apps, but want to jump into the space. Yep. So if you have those brand names behind you, you're much easier to land funding. And when I got there and I realized that, and I'm trying to market products that are going to fail anyways, that's not the most comfortable position to be in, especially when you have to explain to people that your idea is horrible, your mobile app is horrible, and I can't market this, and still you're trying to pay me to market it for you.
Right.
I'd rather get results for people, bring value to them, and that's what really makes us happy, is helping each other and bringing value to other people. And if you're getting paid by someone to not bring any value to them, it's in a bad spot. So 6 months into that, I came back to San Diego, and then I freelanced for about 6 months and read as much as possible. So this was actually a really interesting year for me, and this was just last year. And I was trying to understand digital marketing and psychology as much as possible. So what I did is I read 120 books in 1 year, which is definitely more than, I don't know anybody that's read that many books except maybe Ty Lopez. I don't know if that rings a bell.
Yeah.
And it wasn't me speed reading or doing any special tactic. It was waking up at 4 a.m. every day and reading for a couple hours. that was the only thing I did to really go through all those books. It wasn't like, hey, like this is just one special trick to really read this many books. And a lot of people will promise you that. And the truth is that doesn't actually work.
Yeah.
And I'm not a big fan of speed reading. Many people are. There's a lot of research out there that's proved speed reading to actually be not effective for you.
Right.
And the reason for that is you're not consuming information the way you should be consuming information, and you're not going to remember it either. So as soon as I found that out, I was really happy because I was like, okay, I'm glad that I didn't speed read through all these books, you know, and just hit the number. And it's not about hitting a number. I didn't aim to read 120 books. I said, I wanted to be an expert in this market. And after 6 months, I felt like I could really speak the lingo of digital marketing. It helped me land great jobs, whether that be in freelance or now working for 22 Social.
Yeah, that's awesome. 120 books is quite a lot. Do you read every word in every book? Are you like, because I know a lot of books, they'll kind of make a really great point and then they'll give example after example after example. And it's like, once you've read a couple of the examples, kind of like you get it, right?
I agree with you. The only difference is because I'm a writer too, that when I'm reading, I analyze everything that I write and I look for grammar mistakes. I can't help it. It's just like born into me to look for these grammar mistakes. And so I will read everything, just like looking at the writing style and seeing what I like about it, what I hate about it. Yeah. And that's helped me a lot as a writer, just paying attention to words.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So now 22 Social. So can you talk about what 22 Social does and then what you do here?
So one of the things that when I first started out on my, I guess, startup journey and freelancing is I want to work for a company that has a lot of potential. There's a lot of companies that, you know, their aim is to make $10 million and sell at that point. And maybe it's to make $50 million and sell at that point. And those companies don't really revolutionize, I'll say, the world in any way. They may solve a pain point, but it's not a big enough pain point that I want to solve. And I think that's really reflected in the amount of money your company makes. Usually, unless you're a network marketing company, that's a different case. But in this case, one of the reasons I wanted to work for 22 Social is I was interviewing with them and they were telling me about their software. And first thing I said was, you can't do that. And they said, no, we can. Let us show you. And they whipped out their laptop, and this was Renee at the time, and I was talking to him, and he's the CEO of 22 Social, and he says, hey, look here how we can, build a digital course on Facebook, how we can hold live hangouts on Facebook. And this was so new to me, and I thought I was on the cutting edge of marketing, and I'd been studying marketing for an entire year, just really heavily. And this just blew me away, and I was like, okay, I'm sold. I want to work for you guys. And that's really how it came to be. And one of the reasons why I've been working here, I've been here for about 6 months now and have really loved it is because we all have the same vision. None of us would be working here if we didn't think it was going to be at least a $100 million company. Yeah. And I think that's one of the big things that brings us together because we're able to share a vision. And if you can't share a vision with your team members, then your team will fall apart pretty quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think you guys, it's a different feel here than most businesses. It's like you guys all seem like entrepreneurs as opposed to like, you all have titles and, everybody's doing their thing and that's it. You guys kind of all do everything. And that's awesome. I mean, I think that's how it's done. And none of you guys complain about work. Like you guys want to be here. And so I admire that. I think it's awesome. And then you mentioned you're a writer. So you've been published on so many blogs like Elite Daily and Social Media Today and all these other places. Can you talk about your strategy of getting published in those places?
Yeah, definitely. So I've been published, I think maybe 16 or 17 publications and blogs. And it doesn't just start out by you getting to the best blog in your niche right away. That doesn't happen. You have to start from ground zero. And there's a very effective way to do it to really minimize the work that you put in. And one of the things that, I like to talk about why this is so important to guest posts is that it improves your credibility a lot. So you can go to many websites and you see like a simple logo strip and it says featured here. That does wonders for their credibility and getting people to purchase whatever they're selling. And it's helped me just when I'm selling products and whether it's trying to land a speaking gig or just landing clients. That little featured here logo and there's them seeing my work get published on really great blogs helps a huge amount. And it all started with 3 posts on a blog. And what I realized is that when you're applying to most publications or most blogs is that they'll ask you for 3 links to previous work. And you want it to be something that's relatable to their niche. So let's say they're in a lifestyle category, then the blog posts that you write should be in a lifestyle category. And they also want to see social validation. So there are some tricks to get around this. And I don't know if there's many Facebook marketers out there, but you can also go on Fiverr to do this too. And because they want to see social validation on your posts, you can just go on Fiverr and pay somebody $5 and you'll get 500 likes or maybe 250 likes on your blog post. And that gives you a lot of social validation.
Yeah.
So if you're trying to land that first publication or land into that first blog, that can really help. You pay $15 out to get social validation on those 3 posts, and they won't even read the posts. They don't have time for that. They just want to see the social validation. That's it.
Yeah.
I mean, if they read everybody's posts from all the submissions that they get, they wouldn't have time to make any money.
Right.
And so doing a little trick like this can land you in a publication. Then from there, you leverage that publication's work. So you put 3 posts on that publication, and then you leverage yourself onto a better one. And you go through this process over and again until you're on a top publication. And it seems like a lot of work, but if you really think about it, you're doing the most efficient way. If you're just doing 3 posts and 3 posts and 3 posts, one of the issues comes down to is people want to do this method, but they're not great writers.
Yeah.
You have to be a great writer. There's no way of getting around it because publications will look at your work before they publish it.
Yeah.
So you can't just go on there and just be like, here's my list post that's 500 words long.
Right.
It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I've realized is the posts that they love and that they'll almost 99% of the time always publish are posts from experience and they're how-tos, and they deal with helping people. So it's like how I made this much money doing this project.
Right.
Or I was able to travel the world and do this for charity.
Yeah.
I mean, every publication would publish something like that. It doesn't have to be, that wild. You can get more specific and really hone into what's unique about you, and using that in your articles, and that will do wonders for you.
Yeah, no, so you obviously have a lot of experience with social media marketing. Can you give some tips on how to navigate that? Because it's so hard, and so many people out there I know are trying to start a business or have started something and are just like, okay, I got to do everything. I got to do Twitter, I got to do Instagram, Pinterest, Facebook, the whole thing. And how do you manage all that?
I would say one of the biggest reasons why that publication I had in college failed was because we thought we had to be on every social media channel.
Yeah.
And we knew a little bit about every social media channel, but we didn't know a lot about any single one. And right now, I primarily focus on Facebook. I know Twitter and I know Instagram, but I don't have the time to work on Twitter or Instagram. And if I have one channel that's making me sales, then I have a business. And especially if you have a good profit margin, that definitely helps.
Yeah.
So if you can drive traffic from just Facebook or just Twitter or just Instagram and you're making sales, that's fine. You don't need another channel. And once you master one, then move on to another one. If you spread yourself too thin, it's going to hurt you really bad. And you can either learn it the hard way, or you can just stick to one and see how you master Facebook. And Facebook alone is complex in of itself.
Yeah.
And people don't realize how complex it is. Most people don't get results. I think about 99% of people don't get the results they want from Facebook.
Right.
And it's knowing that you don't have to go at it alone and just use Facebook's platform. One of the things that I think most social media marketers and digital marketers don't realize is that there's always third-party software that will help you with that primary social media channel. Nobody just uses Instagram and says, oh, okay, this Instagram is the only tool that I'm using and I'm going to have a lot of success. They have 3 different types of software they're using for their Instagram to analyze analytics, their likes, analyze their followers, their unfollowers, and that's how they're able to create incredible accounts. And
yeah, that's good stuff. I mean, you need those tools to make it happen. It's impossible otherwise. So, and then, I mean, the same thing, like, I always tell people Facebook, start with Facebook, master it, get as good as you can at it, and then check out the other ones, because that's where everybody is. I mean, what is it, 1.5 billion now on Facebook? Yeah. So I want to go where everybody is instead of trying to get the latest and greatest thing. So now, just speaking of the tools and stuff like that, you're obviously really productive. Can you talk about it, like any productivity tools or tips that you have for people?
Yeah, definitely. And it's funny you asked me that question because I think it's about 6 months ago, I took 2 weeks off to write. It was about a 74-page book on tools you can use for your productivity.
Yeah.
And one of the big things that I realized as a social media marketer, as a digital marketer, is that going to sites I shouldn't be going to takes up a lot of time. And it's how do I prevent myself from going to those sites? And there's a number of Chrome extensions you can use. One is called, I believe it's just called Block Site.
Yeah.
So it's as simple as that. And you just have to Google it and you'll find it. It's free. And what I like to do is it has a redirect option. So I redirect sites that I shouldn't be going to something that would be useful for work. And that makes me really focused on work and I'm not able to escape it. And it's great for my productivity and you get used to it after a while. The first couple of days may be pretty miserable because it's almost like you're going through this period of not being used to concentrating so much and now you're forced to concentrate. But like any habit, it gets ingrained into you and eventually it becomes your norm.
Yeah.
And that's what I think is the real beautiful part of it is once you're really productive and you've been productive for an extended period of time, you don't see it any other way. You're like, okay, this is normal to me. Like I'm used to waking up in the morning and writing 1,000 words. And as soon as you get out of that mindset though, that's when it can really hurt you. And it's about waking up every day with a routine. I think that's very important. Unless you have a lot of control over your thoughts, which not many of us do. And, you know, they have all these tools out here to really help you. And another one of my favorite tools, which, you know, I don't want to forget is it's called Newsfeed Eradicator. Yeah. And I'm a Facebook marketer, so I'm on Facebook a lot. And I don't want to get distracted by all these videos, all these clickbait links. So what I do is I have a simple Chrome extension, this Newsfeed Eradicator, that blocks out my entire newsfeed and replaces it with a motivational quote. Yeah. So as soon as I go to Facebook, I'm ready to start working.
Yeah, that's awesome. I just installed that as well, and it's cool. And I think it's like the analogy would be, if you're not used to that, it's like getting off of heroin because it's such an addiction to just keep going back to your Facebook and looking and seeing what people are doing. And also just was thinking today about how there's a temptation just to check Facebook for just a minute. I'm just going to check for a minute, and that minute can turn into 10 minutes and 20 minutes like that. It's so fast, and all of a sudden you're just down the rabbit hole, and you've done all these things that they don't apply to what you're working on at all. And I definitely have that temptation all the time, and it's tough because I work on Facebook a lot too, and what happens is I kind of need to have the newsfeed open sometimes. So I've noticed myself, but I'm getting way more mindful about that, wait, I just starting to look at posts that really have nothing. I'm reading about Donald Trump, and it's like, what do I need to know about Donald Trump for? Like, it has no bearing on my life at all, but it happens. Okay, so the question of the day, and what I like to ask people about, what are your 3 favorite books? Okay, if you were on a deserted island and you could only have 3 books, what would they be?
Okay, if I was on a desert island, it would be a little bit different because I would say my books are really about motivating you to become a leader and inspire other people. And one of them I like to start off with, which would probably catch some people off guard, is The Elements of Style. And that is basically the number 1 grammar book that most high school students received and they never read. And I've kept that with me all the time wherever I go. So if I'm ever traveling, I have this book. And it's because I think grammar and writing is extremely important if you're trying to spread a message. If you look at the great leaders of our time, whether Gandhi or Martin Luther King, they're always writing. And I think that goes for if you're trying to spread a message, writing is your go-to. And video is becoming more powerful nowadays, but you have to be a great writer. That's really important. And going off that point, the other 2 books one is The Life of Mahatma Gandhi, and just an amazing person. I've actually read 3 books about him, all biographies, just to keep that information fresh in my mind. And I like to read books about people who are really changing the world on the largest scale possible. I think change starts and socially, and then it ends up actually affecting people in the political realm. And in order to make such a huge change in a social aspect, is how is that done? And what I think the most incredible thing, which most people overlook if they're researching Mahatma Gandhi and they're researching Martin Luther King, is Martin Luther King's hero is Mahatma Gandhi. When he was in seminary school, he read 10 books on Gandhi. And right in his dining room table, and it was right over where he actually read, is a picture of Gandhi, a huge portrait. And he wanted to live his life just like Gandhi, and it's no coincidence that Martin Luther King had such a huge impact too, if you look at it that way. And I think that's really incredible. So the other book that I read is the autobiography of Martin Luther King. And they're just such powerful people. And one of the reasons I really like biographies is that you can read How to Win Friends and Influence People. You could read How to Think and Grow Rich. But at the end of the day, you want to see someone else do it. And when you're living someone else's life through a book, through a biography, it becomes much more powerful and you realize it can happen.
Yeah.
So having a case study that's 4 pages long and how to think and grow rich can only do so much for you. But actually really living through someone else's life, and someone that was such as powerful as Mahatma Gandhi or Martin Luther King, I think makes a world of difference. And I think that's a huge part of reading that a lot of people miss out upon. And it's one of the reasons why when they read How to Win Friends and Influence People, it doesn't really change them that much, because they want to see how will someone really use this information on a large scale.
Yeah, exactly. I feel the same way. I love reading biographies. And one of the things that happens when I read a biography is I start hearing that person's kind of voice in my head. Like I start thinking, like, what would they do in this situation? And, so it sort of influences you in a positive way and gets your thoughts in a place of growth. And I think that's huge. That's a really good point. I like the books that you picked out. I haven't read any of them, but I'll definitely pick them up. So yeah, just kind of winding down. I wanted to also, because this show is about freedom, you're about to undertake a pretty big adventure here in a couple weeks, doing the Pacific Crest Trail. So talk about that a little bit. Like, how did you decide to do that? When are you going? How are you going to do the whole thing?
So a couple things about the Pacific Crest Trail is there is some bad news recently, which is I've been talking to a doctor and I had a hamstring injury, so it might be put off for another couple months, which is the good news about it is I have a lot more time on my hands and a lot more opportunity. So I've been talking to a lot of mentors and thinking about how I should go about the process, recovering and focusing on something that I can create some value with, whether that's hopefully writing a book in the meantime, because that's what I wanted to do on the Pacific Crest Trail. And I've been talking to some of my good friends about collaborating on that. And regarding the Pacific Crest Trail, I do have everything already purchased because I was planning on going. So it's still happening. And I'm talking to someone who's already gone. And a really good friend of mine, he's given me the ropes and I have everything down to a key. So I'm really excited about that. And hopefully it'll happen in less than 2 months. And I'm going through just a California part. So not from Mexico all the way to Canada, just California. And I think it's going to be, beautiful. And not only that, is I'm not just going on this trail, but I want to meet a lot of people along the way. So I'm going to be taking pit stops, whether that's in San Francisco or in LA. And the reason for that is that life is a journey. If I just limit myself to this trail, I think I'm going to miss out on a lot of experiences.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think that's going to be an amazing experience, and you won't regret it. I think, life is about getting out there and doing what you want to do. Now, what was your original motivation for doing the PCT?
Last year, I actually hiked about 30 trails in California, and I've been into hiking for a while. And I'll say in my really down times when I have a lot of questions going on, I like to hike up to, let's say, the top of a nice mountain or hill, whatever it may be. And there's a lot of beautiful ones here in San Diego. Yeah. And then I just sort of ponder and I think about, the biggest life decisions that I have. And I know that there's a big turning point in my life coming up just now, and the reason for that is I have more free time and I want to do something big and I need to make that big decision. And a lot of people don't really, I would say, go hiking to find their big decision. Everybody has their own, I would say, interests that they really go off upon to make those big decisions. For me, it's hiking, and I think, I'm really excited to see what comes out of it.
Yeah, awesome. Well, good luck with that. And before we kind of sign off here, I want to just talk a little bit about what I'm doing with 22 Social. So I'm building a new site that it kind of goes along with my Try Swim Coach site, and it's more about weight loss and fitness. And I'm using the 22 Social platform, and Josh has helped me a lot with that. And I'm going to be talking about it a lot on we have a Facebook group now for Freedom Lovin', and it's called Freedom Lovin' Quest. And so it's going to be I'm going to put it in the show notes of this show. I'll have a link to it. But if you want to join, you can just go to Facebook and put in Freedom Lovin' Quest. And that's Lovin' without the G. And then you can find the group there and request to join, and I will most likely accept you. I don't think I've rejected anyone yet. But I just want to mention that I'm going to be going through the process of putting this membership site on with 22 Social and showing just how easy things have become to build a membership site, build an info product site on Facebook without even having to deal with WordPress and all that. So I think it should be a pretty exciting process, and we're looking forward to it as well.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome. It's definitely something that's very innovative. And I'm glad Kevin's on the forefront.
Yeah, good time. So your website now, it's joshuafechter.me, right?
Correct.
Okay.
So you can go to my website to learn more about me. That's joshuafechter.me. I also have some blog posts up there. I would say most of my posts aren't there because most of my posts are actually guest posts. So if you want to dive into my guest posts, you can just Google my name, and I think a lot of them will just turn up right on the front page.
Awesome. Cool. All right, Josh. Well, it's been awesome having you on. That was a fun chat.
Thank you.
All right.
Awesome.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Freedom Lovin' Podcast. To break free today, head on over to freedomlovin.com and download our free guide. 7 practical tips to living free in an unfree world.